Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to discuss the one good piece of news to come out of the nightmare of the last week, and that is that England bowled out Australia on the first day of the first test at Edgbaston. No, seriously, a Remain alliance has won the by-election that leaves Boris Johnson with a working majority of just one in the Westminster Parliament. But first, if you find yourself enjoying the video, then please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel. So I have to admit to having been more than a little concerned by this by-election in Brecon and Radnorshire in Wales this week. The Conservatives had a commanding majority from the last election, and I said earlier in the week that the Brexit Party were unlikely to take more votes from the Conservative candidate than Labour did from the Remain alliance headed by the Liberal Democrats in this constituency. This wasn't like Peterborough. This constituency, although was technically Leave in the Brexit referendum, but it was by a very small margin. However, I'm delighted to say that I am wrong. The Brexit Party certainly didn't take that many votes away from the Conservatives, though it was enough. Without the Brexit Party standing, the Conservatives would probably have retained the seat. But there were a couple more things in favour of the Liberal Democrats beyond Brexit parties fighting amongst themselves. The first is that Plaid Cymru and the Green Party didn't put up candidates in a move designed to prompt the Remain votes to get fully behind the Liberal Democrats. Without this, the Lib Dems almost certainly would not have won. The margin that they won by was not that great, with or without the Brexit Party's interference. Secondly, although Labour have swung behind Remain in this Parliament, their medium to long-term position is still mired in confusion. As a result, Labour lost a lot of the vote share in this election. In fact, Labour lost more of the vote share than the Conservatives. So when I said I didn't think the Brexit Party would take off as many votes from the Tories as Labour did from the Lib Dems, it was because I underestimated just how badly Labour are campaigning under Corbyn. There, I said it again. That being said, it was interesting to note that Corbyn himself didn't appear to be campaigning personally in this by-election. That was a little odd, I thought, as he's always out and about doing this sort of thing, and especially when there's an election on, even a by-election. Perhaps we should be generous and read it as a sign that he was secretly backing the Remain alliance without overtly doing so. But in this case, it's a good thing. The election result was important for a number of reasons. First, it means Boris Johnson can begin his premiership by taking over from Theresa May and earning unenviable records. There was a great tweet from someone yesterday pointing out the number of days that various prime ministers have gone before they lost a by-election. Needless to say that Boris Johnson has now smashed this record out of the park. You could hardly imagine this record ever being broken again, in fact. So, good news to Herbert Henry Asquith, who was actually a good Prime Minister, to be fair, who had this awful record against his name, most undeserved, with 16 days as Prime Minister before losing a by-election. Boris Johnson now has his record of shortest time on, I guess we'd say, 9 days as the result came out today. The second reason that this is important is that the Conservatives have lost an election in a seat where they commanded a large majority. They can't dismiss this as, oh, well, it wasn't really a Conservative seat anyway. It absolutely was. This will focus the attention of not only Conservative MPs in general, but even the most senior ones. Boris Johnson himself is far from guaranteed to win his own seat back in the event of a general election, which means that even if the Conservatives somehow were able to still form a government after a general election, if Boris Johnson doesn't win his own seat, he's not an MP. He can't be Prime Minister. In fact, unless he can persuade Vladimir Putin to tell Nigel Farage to not put up a Brexit Party candidate against him in an election, then Labour have a decent chance of unseating him if they can get their act together. The only thing that will give Johnson any heart from this result was that Labour are still performing very badly. It's not that Labour had any chance of winning this seat, they never have, but losing so much of the vote is indicative of the mistrust that the population have in the party to agree on Remain and then to mean it. The third reason this matters is because it all but wipes out Boris Johnson's majority in Parliament. If you add up the number of Conservative MPs plus the DUP MPs, they total one more than all of the other voting MPs. Now, there are some MPs that would still vote for Boris Johnson's motions, of course, so I'm not saying he's only going to win by one on all matters, but it means that he will struggle to push through legislation without a serious battle. Just one Conservative MP can make the difference in theory, and they all know this. Boris Johnson is now leading a parliamentary party that hates him, and the lowliest backbencher now has the power, in theory, to bring him down. It's literally like leading a battalion where all the soldiers behind him have their bayonets positioned in his back. Fourth, it matters because it takes the narrative away from Boris Johnson. If the Conservatives had won, Johnson would have been saying that it was proof that the people were sold on his vision of Brexit and now it was time to deliver on the will of the people. Now he can't. Of course he will downplay the results. Not entirely without reason. We have to note that the Brexit votes across all parties did beat the Remain votes across all parties, but Remain votes beat Brexit votes in the European elections, but that didn't stop Farage trying to claim victory there. But in Westminster elections, vote share counts for nothing. We use first past the post, and these results show that a general election now means Conservatives run the risk of losing dozens of seats as the Brexit party tear great chunks out of their share, and even UKIP are still nibbling away, which could swing the result in the event of a tight contest. Some people might say that Labour and the Lib Dems will take votes from each other as well, but they always do. There's nothing new there. The only new dynamic here is that the Conservatives are going to have the Brexit party take votes from them on their right wing, and far more than UKIP ever did as well. Boris Johnson heads a minority government, a situation where you absolutely need to get Parliament on your side to get anything done, and yet he is setting himself up for a war with Parliament this autumn. As it currently stands, it's abundantly clear that Boris Johnson is gearing up for a general election this autumn. He knows he can't do anything to stop it. In fact, it has to be pointed out, what Boris Johnson will definitely take from this result is that he needs to be more Brexity than the Brexit party to have any chance of winning a general election. So he's going to be further reinforced along his current line. He's drawing up battle plans for a general election, which, as I say, cannot be avoided. This by-election may just be a skirmish in the coming war, but it is one he's lost. There is also another Conservative MP facing a criminal trial into sexual assaults, which could, if he's found guilty, result in yet another chance to lose a Tory seat before long. Not that that affects his majority at the moment. He'd already had the whip withdrawn when he was charged, so currently does not count as a Conservative MP. But if a Remain party wins the seat, and Labour would be in with a good shout, then it would be a sobering pre-general election warning to the current government. Finally, this result is important because we can shift the conversation a little bit away from deal or no deal Brexit and acknowledge that there are people in this country still fighting to remain in the EU. People who don't have their heads stuck in a history book written by someone who knows nothing of history. So I hope you found the video interesting. If you'd like to support the channel further, then please click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.